Damodaran.
Hello, sir.
He goes with the name of Pranav Kumar. Must be his son's name.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, it said Damodaran, but then why does it show as Pranav Kumar? But having said that, I must admit, just before I joined, I had to change the name from Sanvi Hindi class to Divya. So completely understand with the remote learning, it's hard.
Correct. And Dr. Rajini is from Cochin.
Hello, doctor.
She's a teacher. She teaches
very nice.
business school. Yeah. And Dr. Rajesh Kumar also is a college teacher.
Hello, sir.
And all of them are regular teachers. I am the one adopted teacher. I'm just getting that.
That's nice. I mean, when I was young, before I started off on my career, I should say that, I probably always wanted to start a school, not into any of the college stuff, but then always wanted to start off a school, get into teaching and all that. Now, I don't know if I'm suited for that, but I think that's always been a dream. But having a daughter now, I don't know if I'll have the patience to do it. So, whenever I look at teachers, I just think, oh my God, I bow to them because I know how hard it is to manage.
Yes. Yeah. Teaching in the school is very interesting. One day I went for a guest lecture in a school. It was amazing. It's really nice. Yeah. Anyway, coming back to that, Divya used to work with me for a short period of time, maybe 1 year or so, if I'm right. But we are in touch for a long time now. We are friends. And maybe Divya should tell about her experience. I hired her long time back in her first job or just after her first job, something like that, when she was very young. But now she's a very experienced professional. Divya, why don't you tell about your profile?
Sure. So thank you, Ravi. So as Ravi mentioned, Ravi was a person who hired me when I had about 10 months of experience. So I did my engineering, and immediately after my engineering, as with most MBA students, I sort of moved into MBA, and then I did my MBA in HR. Started off with a product development company in Bangalore. I was there for a very short time because, and it was interesting. I saw one of the questions which spoke about the values of the organization and the individual. Somewhere, I felt that really did match. And, the whole question of ethics came in, and then, I said, okay, this is really not the place where I want to work. And then I decided to move back to Chennai. And it was there that Ravi sort of, hired me. Again, a very, very interesting interview experience that I had with Ravi goes back. And as I was just looking at the questions, there were a lot of things that I was reflecting on. And one of that was, the question around, how do recruiters hire? Is it gut? Is it, a lot of psychometric stuff that goes inside analysis and all that. So I went through 5 rounds of interview for a job of an executive HR with 10 months experience. Okay, so that was my experience with Ravi, and then thankfully he took me. But then we had a wonderful time in that organization, though it was only 1 year. With Ravi, he's always been a guide, a mentor, someone who I always look up to. And there was one thing which I quote in any forum, which I've taken very personally, which Ravi really lived to as well. And probably I'm just hoping we'll be able to cover it off in one of the questions that you may have. And then, I moved to Australia after that. So it was for 3 years. I was with that organization, moved to Australia, worked in Australia for 7 years. And then we decided I worked with KPMG, looking up the audit division as a HR business partner, and then Schneider Electric and so on. And then we decided to come back to India, where I joined Cognizant as a HR business partner for their banking and financial services division. And then from there on, I moved to head trade and cash in Standard Chartered, GBS, in Chennai. And then finally, I moved to Fiserv to be their director HR, heading first data development HR, and also be their site head for Chennai office. And then most recently, I moved back to Australia. So that's where I am. I finished up my last stint with Fiserv in March, and I've taken a small break, hoping to get back into the workforce here. But that's about me in short. So about 17 years of HR generalist experience across multiple industries, and between Australia and India as well. So I'll leave that there.
Oh, 17 years, is it? You don't look like
years.
that,
Yes.
actually.
It is 17 years, sir. I think, time does fly.
Yeah, you don't look like that.
Thank you, Ravi.
Yes, that's wonderful. Yeah, she has been a very successful HR professional, and she's grown. And now she will have to find another job in Australia, in Melbourne, is it? You are in Melbourne, Sydney?
Brisbane. I'm in Brisbane.
Brisbane. Okay. Yeah. So getting into the subject, we are going to talk about personalities, people. Maybe I will ask just one question and subsequently leave it to Dr. Rajini and Damodaran and Dr. Rajesh. But before that, I would like Dr. Rajini and Damodaran to tell you about this venture. Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Hello.
Dr. Rajini?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce the subject to her? Yeah.
Yes. Madam, we are, I'm sorry, Ms. Divya.
Just call me Divya. Yeah.
Okay. So three of us are authoring a book. Actually, one more author was supposed to come, who is my colleague, Ms. Rekha. So myself, Damodaran sir, Ravi sir, and my colleague Rekha are authoring a book on organizational behavior, which basically caters to the needs of management students. And we have set the syllabus for the book, which will be covering almost all the parts of management students of all the universities in South India. And to add the innovative feature, we have come up with these YouTube interviews, which will be uploaded in our YouTube channel, so that the management students can watch this video, see whatever they want. You'll be sharing your experiences with us, first-hand experiences on various facets. And today we will be covering the portions from module 4 of our textbook, which deals with leadership. You have job satisfaction and your power and politics, which is usually present in any of the organization what we come across. So we request you to share your experiences with us so that the students can watch and they can learn.
If you don't mind, I think we talked about personality.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. Actually, basically, fourth module deals with all these parts. We will be covering our second module. Is it not so, Ravi sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, sir.
This is about people. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And one more thing which I want to add with Dr. Rajini, what she said, and this is going to be pioneering activity of us. Actually, no one has tried like this. Like what students normally know, they study theory part. Okay. After studying it, probably they don't know how to practice it in industry. Yeah. So they can understand at least what industry people are telling and their experiences. Probably that would be helping them to go ahead further. That is what we have taken up this particular activity. And what we deal, the schedule, I mean, modules are there. There are 6 modules, and each module is going to be with the different kinds of videos. The videos sure. Which will be shared by the experiences of your people like you. So this is what our idea behind. And probably when students read the subject and they can match their theory part with industry practices, they would be ready for industry. That is the motto of doing this kind of activities.
Sure. And I think what you're saying sort of makes a lot of sense, because, even when I did my HR, I think one of the things that we always used to look forward to was, the guest lectures, because we had someone from the industry come and talk to us about, case studies from the industry and so on. So I think it's really, really important, for students to have that feel. Because all said and done, I think one is theory, but then, how does it actually, and it's great you're trying to bring in that bridge, or bridge
Yes,
the gap
yes,
between,
yes, yes.
the industry and theory, the practice and the theory, because, some of those may look very, very good in theory, may not be applicable
Yeah.
in the industry. And, if we take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, how does that translate into a workplace? It's still relevant, but in what context and how do people sort of use it? I think that will be interesting as well. So really, really happy to be able
And
to
our
contribute.
our book has written materials followed by questions for university kind of examinations, and
Right.
then we give them a caselet for each module has got caselet, and there will be YouTube channel which will carry out with this QR model, and they can get into that particular video and understand what particular module says.
Right.
That's the idea behind this.
Great. Lovely to hear that.
And
Ravi sir is talking,
Ravi sir,
but unmute.
Yeah, so we are trying to get perspectives of the industry on the theory that we are trying to put it together. That's the idea.
Yes.
Is that okay? So on this module, this is about personalities and people. And maybe I'll just ask one question. Tell us about some significant people that you met with, during this, people who strike. You can remember. Then we will take it further.
Sure. I'll probably start off with Ravi himself, and because one of the things, as I told you, and because I was really young, and people have a very, very high impact. When you're starting off on your career, there are people who you look up to. I think of all the things that working with Ravi was one thing which really stuck to me to the end, and which I sort of try and emulate with my teams as well, is that he as a leader was someone who said that, and I quote his words. He said, look, if you're successful, anything that you're working on, if it's successful, all the credit is given to you, right? And if something goes wrong, never worry, I will take the blame for that. Okay? And that's something that Ravi stood by all through. And to me, that's a very, very, very powerful tenet which comes across as a leader, because, and that's basically what your team really looks up to as well. Someone who will be able to give you that recognition, someone, who you can trust, and someone who, is there to back you no matter what, right? Because I think all of us have made mistakes. I've made blunders at my workplace. Thankfully, I think people have been really, really nice to me, and have helped me overcome that. But having said that, I think it's always been because I had very, very strong relationships with my leaders, who always sort of tended to back me up, and to that extent, I think I'm really thankful. So I think that is one critical aspect of a leader. Something that I would personally look up to is someone who you can trust, and someone who would back you up, right? That's the first thing. The second thing, if I have to go back to my Cognizant days, I think it's also about having a leader who is willing to let you grow, and the person is willing to be challenged, right? I think that is, again, a very, very important quality, because as much as probably the person was more experienced than me, having worked in many other organizations and even by position of power, he never, not even once, sort of stopped me from asking questions or challenging. And I'm talking about challenging even when the entire team was present. I'm not just talking about a one-to-one conversation, but I'm just talking about, even when the team was there, to be able to challenge, ask why something needs to be done, especially if you don't really agree with it personally. It's, for someone to allow that sort of a conversation, which doesn't really necessarily be boxed, and to have that comfort level. I think that's again very important because
Can you narrate incident? Can you narrate an incident?
Sure. There are so many decisions that you have to take as a HR business partner. Sometimes it revolves around redundancies. Sometimes it revolves around a particular program itself and why you want to do it and so on. Or even for that example, let's say you have a compensation strategy that you want to use for a particular unit, which may not be allowed for another unit within the same service, right? And so each of us were managing different portfolios. And when one of my requests was turned down for a compensation program, something that I had designed, the immediate question was like, why? Why when it can work for, let's say, a different account, why can't it be used for my account, right? And of course, it was a bit of an emotional question as well, because you're managing that unit, you want to build credibility within that unit and so on. But I think the very fact that the leader allowed me to question the rationale, to come back with a different viewpoint, and so to that question, obviously there was a lot of rationalizing that happened, and the outcome was that it was a win-win situation, right? He gave in a few things, I gave up on a few things. So while it may not have been the exact same model that could have worked for a different unit, nevertheless, I think those conversations helped both of us at least come to a different strategy, a different plan, which would work for that unit, and thereby step me up for success, right? As a HR business partner, because I become the face of HR for the business, right? And I think that's very important, because in which case there were no egos that were involved, saying that I'm the boss, I tell you to do it and you do it. Instead, it was about how do we sort of have that collaborative approach? How do we sort of brainstorm and come up with a solution which will probably work for both? That again, I think is really important. Allowing individuals to sort of be able to voice their views and respect them for their views. I think that's really important. The third important thing is trust in your team's capabilities. And in Standard Chartered, when I worked, my boss there literally had his hands off completely. That's because and there was one situation where we were hiring for a senior vice president, and I was a little hesitant because I had just joined the company, and I was like, oh, maybe it should be my boss who should be interviewing the individual and not myself. And Pat came the reply saying that you are playing that role, which means that you're capable of doing it. So I don't want to be doing the interview. It is your portfolio. You've got to do it. I trust your capabilities, right? And that then puts that it brings in a completely different perspective, and you start owning up to things much more and being responsible for it. So I think the accountability goes up more, the empowerment is there, and hence you obviously want to succeed in it. So I think the third important thing will be empowerment or trust in your team's capabilities. I think these are three things that really stand out to me when I think about my experience with people who I've worked with, which I also try and emulate when I work with my teams.
But how was it in Australia? Can you give an example?
Again, in Australia, it is not very different. It's culturally a little different. That's the only thing. But I think the empowerment definitely does exist. And what they really look for is, when you're playing a particular role, they just want you to take responsibility for that role and for the actions that come out of the role. As Dr. Rajni said, I think politics do exist in every organization. It becomes an integral part of a corporate life. But I think when you're having very, very strong leaders, you're able to overcome those politics. And to quote specifically about my experience in Australia, when I wanted to make a move, from an organization, the first person I spoke to was my boss. And so I asked him, I want to obviously grow in my career. Do you see any opportunities for me here, considering that some of the positions just got filled up, and there's going to be nothing that's going to come up in some time? So what are your views? And this is very, very unlike, I mean, touch wood, in whether it's Australia or India, the first person I've always reached out to when I wanted to make a change has been my boss, which not a lot of people agree with, but I think I've just been lucky to have good bosses. But I think it started off with Australia, where the person gave me an absolutely non-judgmental opinion of what I should be doing. And he did tell me that, it's going to be quite some time before a position comes up, and I think you're ready for it, and you should go for it, right? Just make a move. I'm happy to support you. Anytime you want to come back, let me know and we'll take you back. To me, I think that was key, and which I take back even today as a HR professional. So when I know that I don't believe in retaining associates for the sake of retention. I retain them. I have a retention conversation only if I know that I can make a difference for them, if I can help them in their career, in what they want. Otherwise, I'm really happy for them to go and leave on a good note, and me being able to reach out to them whenever I have a position that is that they are ready for. So I think that being non-judgmental and just willing to look at the good of the associate is something which really struck me, Ravi, when I was in Australia, especially when it was my first job in Australia, and here sitting and thinking, oh my God, what should I be doing and not. Just that very candid conversation that we had helped me. And that's something which I see a lot in Australia, which is, they're very, very candid. They're very open. And they would just tell you things on their face. And the other thing was about, as I said, one of the comments that came to me was that speak up. I was not someone who would speak up, I'd probably wait for my turn. And whereas in Australia, they really appreciate you speaking up. They want you to express their views. They want you to challenge them. They want you to come up with suggestions, and all by yourself rather than, being prompted to. So I think those candid conversations definitely did help me grow as a person and in my career as well.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So, madam, in your opinion, Divya, in your opinion, the quality, should it be possessed by a leader?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
The point where you win your employees' trust. The point where you win the trust of your employees, so that the employee feels free to come and talk to you for a job change. Is it a good quality in a leader or in or an individual's personality?
Absolutely, because I think any relationship for that matter operates from a level of trust, and and even me as a leader, that's the way I have always operated. I start off from the level of trust, unless someone gives me a reason to do otherwise. So the starting point is always trust, right? And I think it becomes really important for a leader to be establishing that, because whether it is their productivity at work, whether it is their learnability, whether it is how well they really succeed in their role, etc., I think depends a lot on the leader. I think it sounds very cliched when people say that people don't leave jobs, they leave their bosses and so on, right? I mean, we've heard a lot about it. For me, it's the other way. I've stayed back in jobs because of my bosses. sometimes, you think, oh my God, I'm hitting this point where I really want to grow. I really want a change and so on. And, I've always had my bosses where I can go tell them that, and then they, ensure that something else is given to me, some other portfolio is given to me, or they've at least reasoned it out with me and saying that, hold on for a year, there are these things which are in the works, why don't you try that out and then you decide, right? So I think it's a basic fundamental thing that trust needs to be established for any relationship to work, and more so in a relationship where you're not tied down, like for example a marriage, right? I think you would probably put in much more effort to have that going, whereas in a developing market such as India, where it's so easy to switch jobs, where there are so many other factors that come into play, I think it's very important to have that trust component between the team and the leader, primarily because I think when people see the inherent goodness that what you're doing is really wishing them well, and it is not a tactic to hold them back for whatever reason. It's about the individual. The focus is on the individual. Then I think that is being reciprocated as well. When you know that someone's invested so much in you, you automatically want to invest back. So I think it's something that any leader should have. And again, it ideally should come naturally. Okay. And if it doesn't come naturally, people will see that. People are very smart. And, especially I think youngsters of today, extremely smart. So they will see through that. But I think, if that inherent trust is there, inherent quality of goodness is there, that will definitely come through.
Okay. And from your experience, can you list out a few factors which will determine the personality of an individual? What are the basic traits you require in order to work in a group, work individually, perform well for the organization?
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on, it's very situational and it's very role based. Let me put it that way. And have I changed? Has my personality changed over the years? I definitely do think it has, right? So, because I think as you grow in an organization, as the situations change, as the circumstances change, your personality also changes. My values would probably remain constant, whereas I think my personality, my attitudes, my behavior, all that could change depending on the situation. When I started off with, I was not an assertive person. I was not at all assertive. Okay, I was probably this person who was always seeking out harmony. What I wanted was for everybody to be happy and to be felt accepted. That is what I was, and probably that's what Ravi's seen in me. If you go and ask Satish Rajaratnam, who was my boss in Cognizant, he will have a completely different view. He's never seen that Divya at all who will comply with what he's saying. It will always be challenging. Why can't I do that? Why should this happen? And so on, right? So again, it depends on the role that the individual plays. And to me, but I think there are probably a few of the things which I would personally look for, and which I know a lot of my colleagues and friends and peers also look for when they're hiring people. One is the learnability of the individual, right? How keen are they to know more? How keen? Because, and this is something that I always tell, I think, management students, is that it's okay, you may never land the perfect job, right? But, you take up the job, excel in it, and then automatically there will be opportunities that come your way, so that you will end up in a job that you really like, or you will end up in a role that you really like. And to quote my own example, when I moved from India to Australia, I had to step back. I had to take a role which was lesser than what I was playing in India. But for me, I was willing to do that because I just wanted to break through the market. I just wanted to get in there and prove myself, right? So I was willing for anything. And so that's how I landed my first job in, it was with Gartner, where I did, it was called a HR generalist. That was it, right? It was a 6-week contracting job that I picked up. But then what that did was it gave me that first break. It gave me the confidence that, I can get in there. I can prove myself. And then I moved to KPMG. And in KPMG, I started off as a HR coordinator. And I ended up in 4 years, I was a HR consultant moving out of KPMG and looking after NSW as a people advisor, right? So I think that's really key.
Divya, this Gartner job, why did you think they hire you?
So for me, I was just looking for my first job here, and I was willing to do anything. And I knew it was contract. They clearly told me that I was overqualified for the job. And so they were hesitant to pick me for the role. So I told them, look, it really doesn't matter. It's a contracting job. I'm happy to take it up. What you want is, someone to do HR analytics, and I can do that, right? I'm pretty good at that. I can do that. I'll do that for you. Meanwhile, I'll start looking. So it was clearly set out in the beginning itself that I was overqualified for the job. I will probably not be converted into a full-time because, they don't have a position which will fit me. But I was fine with it. I said,
that job needed you to be very compliant as you were in Saxoft, vis-a-vis not so compliant when you were in Cognizant. Would you say that?
So this was nothing to do with compliance, Ravi. It was more around analytics, how analytical am I to do it? That was it. So it was more on the functional competency rather than my attitude itself.
Really?
But if I had to come to specifically on that, let's say, when I started off my career to, where I probably landed. For example, when I started off my career, I did not have much experience. I did not have much exposure. And hence, it was important for me to be able to learn the ropes before, I can comment on things and, I can contribute as well.
So the focus was followership. Is that right? The focus was followership.
Absolutely. It was followership. Now, if you ask me, is that correct or wrong? Today I may have a completely different view. I might still say I should have still exhibited my individuality, and given forth my views and so on. But then, and we're talking about 16 years back, it was different, so it was about followership. It was just, okay, toe the line, understand, just get, you need to get your results. So get it done. And you have someone to guide you through it. Now, when you get into a manager role and, when you're having a team of 5 people reporting into you, it no longer becomes followership because, they are people who are looking up to you to be able to looking at you for coaching or, for you to be a mentor and so on. And at that place, followership does not work. You've got to really lead, and you've got to lead by example. And which then means that, you have to, and there are some decisions which are hard decisions that you need to take. And if you need to be able to take those hard decisions, you need to be able to get to the root of it and be absolutely convinced as to why, which is when you can convince someone else. So I think that whole dynamic changed from followership to being able to lead. In my last job, when you sort of start, when you're a center lead or, when you're a director of HR, it again is very different. You're having 3 people who look up to you to take decisions, and you have the business who looks up to you to take decisions. Like, for example, we had a job architecture harmonization between 2 different companies, an acquired company and, the acquiring company. Now, that obviously, they then look at you for functional knowledge. They look at you for being able to make those decisions, along with them. That requires an absolutely different assertiveness level there to say that, this is the right thing to do. This is the way we should go. And, this is the path we should take. Of course, take everybody on board. But then there are times where you've got to call the shots and you've got to make those decisions. So I think, as I said, the personality changed, from being a very, very, I wouldn't call submissive, but, someone who would toe the line to someone who would call the shots. But I think through all this, I think one thing which always stood is, your willingness to take on challenges, to learn. I think that is absolute key. Two, I think collaboration is something that is a must, because you, at any given point in time, whether you're in HR or any of the other fields, right? It really doesn't matter. You're working with people, unless you're working with machines and you're completely into coding and other stuff, then it's a different thing altogether. For me, I've learned a lot from my peers. Even today, they are my first point of call if I get stuck with anything. It's just one call away to say, hey, how would you do this? And I think what also comes through is many times, for example, in my team in Cognizant, we were four of us HR business partners managing like billion-dollar portfolios. The four of us were completely different individuals in terms of personalities. One person was extremely process oriented. One person was relationship oriented. One person is like, it's all about team. And then, you have someone who thinks, oh, this is the way it should be done, and so on. But we were able to keep aside a lot of our differences and, come together for a common good, and hence that collaboration component becomes very, very important, because that's really what you look forward to as well.
See, you talked about, I'll just cut it down. You talked about the transition, from individual contributor, where you are a follower, to a leader, first level leader, then subsequently leader. That's the transition you talked about. And you also, we are aware that this transition takes its toll in your mind, and you have to change, you changed. Can you talk about that struggle of change in yourself?
I don't really call it too much of a struggle. For me, I think the first struggle, the struggle as such, was when I moved from India to Australia, and when I had to change from, being a follower to someone who can speak out. That was the moment of truth for me rather than a struggle, because I needed someone to give me that feedback to say that, is it that you don't understand stuff, or do you understand but not willing to talk? And that's when, this bulb went off in my head saying, oh my God, is that how it's being construed? Right. Post that, I don't think it was really a struggle. I think it was just a transition. But then the transition also happened at a pace where, I was comfortable, because with every role came in, a power of position, and your experience, and what you're able to contribute, and so on. So your confidence automatically goes up, and then it just becomes a transition rather than a struggle. I wouldn't really call it a struggle. I think I was lucky enough. It wasn't very jerky. It was like a very smooth transition of being able to, with each of my role changes, I was able to take on that, and I think the previous jobs just set me up for it.
Okay, Dr. Rajesh Kumar can ask questions.
Ms. Divya, based on your experience, tell about which difficult personality will help the employee to sustain longer period in corporate?
So, which difficult personality
will help the employee, newcomers employee who can sustain longer period in corporate?
So to me, I think the real important personality trait that an individual should have to be able to be in an organization for a longer time will be, in my head, I would think persistence is what I would probably call out, primarily because there are so many of these times where you can get absolutely disillusioned with the work that you're doing. I've been, I don't know how, I can't even count how many times I've been disillusioned with what I'm doing. But I think, I've always persevered and persisted with it. Of course, it is not that I did it on my own. As I said earlier, I've always had these conversations. I've always spoken to people, be able to reach out to them. But I think it's also about ensuring that you persevere towards your goal. What is it that you really want to do? And then you persevere towards that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just got to find a place where your goal is being met. And I think that's, and Dr. Rajesh, I think that's one of the things, there was a question around, why do people change jobs? Is it, because of economics? Is it because of org values and so on? I think one thing which has really changed between then and now is that, it's all become very individual focused. What is it that I as an individual want? And is an organization being able to cater to that? Right? So to me, I think that's what it would be: persistence and perseverance, coupled with all that we spoke about. I hope that sort of answers.
Thank you, ma'am. So I want to put forward one more question. What is your opinion on traditional learning and digitalized learning? Which is more powerful in industrial circumstances?
I think okay, you're asking me something that so I used to manage capability development for my unit, and in today's context, I think and again, it's my view, in today's context, I think digital learning is probably more well positioned, primarily because people really, we are sort of very time poor, and people don't have too much of time for, their attention spans are lesser. They're already with pouring enough work, people just don't find time to be able to go sit in classrooms, nor is the business being able to accommodate that. So what we've seen is a lot of the classroom trainings have now become digitized, either through e-learnings. You have nano learning, you have bite-sized learning. So a lot of the learning programs which we used to do in one of the bigger companies that I worked with was, it was all nano and bite-sized learning. So you would have a small, 5-minute video taking through the concepts, which people can just listen to in the bus. They don't have to necessarily go sit in a classroom and do it and so on. So I think in today's context where we are extremely time poor, digitized learning can reach more people, because it then becomes learn from anywhere, learn at any time, and just get done with it, right? Rather than traditional classroom learning, which becomes really hard in terms of operationalizing the entire thing. You would have to get a batch of 30 people to come sit down together, a trainer to take them through an 8-hour training session and so on, which becomes extremely difficult in project-driven organizations, time-driven organizations. A lot of IT companies, for example, work on time and material model. So every minute literally counts because it's being billed to the client. And and just calling them on a Saturday to do the training then affects the work-life balance of employees as well, which they're not too fond of. So this way, when you have your nano learning and e-learning modules and stuff, which you can do from home, I think that there's been a huge uptake of such learning. So in today's context, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially in the corporate world.